Okay. Welcome to Nashville.con, as in con artists, where we're going to pull back the curtain. We're going to see who people really are behind the curtain and what's even better behind closed doors. We learn about public image versus true identity, big egos versus the yes people that worship them, narcissists, codependency, because who you are on stage or on social media is called an act. That's why they call it a performance. We're going to talk about panic and PTSD, certainly with the national pandemic and quarantine. People are nursing and rehearsing events, looping, seeing it on media over and over. And every time they keep reliving how many are dying and whatever, it's causing almost a national PTSD. Even, you know, I can recognize that because I've been diagnosed with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, from emotional and mental abuse that I've endured from men. So, and in my marriage and whatnot. So I will say I recognize this national almost panic, where the reaction of the panic becomes the issue, not even the innate problem. So I really want to caution people from nursing and rehearsing, taking a break, which I see my father do. He'll listen to a little bit of stuff, and at 86 years old, he'll say, why worry about it? It's nothing you can do. And he has a way of plugging on in life that I don't, and this is why I believe God took my mother and left my father. So my father at 86 can teach me how to cope with intense pain, something he's had to do. PTSD on the border. The American Academy of Pediatrics and the American Bar Association explains how ripping a mother from a child causes both post-traumatic stress in the child as well as the mother. These things can be waking up shaking, wanting to smell your son's skin, wanting to hold them. You know, it's a child that grew in your womb and nursed at your breast. Certainly mine did for 2 years. So the amount of PTSD on myself from not being able to hold my child and love him and whatnot has been something called parental alienation, that he has actually kicked and screamed and ran out of breath and struggled to breathe. The last time I was able to even just see him on his iPad, he had said that he is having trouble breathing. He misses Mama so bad he can hardly breathe. We hope you'll go to Heidi Jo Guthrie Facebook page and find out how you can help with this situation and rectify a very awful tragedy that has happened in regards to that. But this program, Living with Intense PTSD and Pain, and certainly the pain my father's been through, we're hoping helps others. So Dad, I want to talk about, first of all, tell everybody your name.
Larry Guthrie.
And where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Portland, Oregon, in the area which is the low-class area. It was a type of slum area that poor people lived in, and the houses were much cheaper.
That's not where you live now. You have a beautiful home now. But sometimes when people can see people with nice things or a nice home, can they assume that you just were given it or inherited, and they don't realize you earned every penny?
Yeah, that's hard to fathom. Where I came from and then where I am today is just a tremendous change.
Now you had a farm, because I know I grew up on that farm, and I had a wonderful opportunity that many people don't, to bottle feeding baby calves and our chickens that we had and our German Shepherd puppy races. And
yes.
So all that to say is, why did you want a farm so bad? Did you have pets where you grew up in the slums?
Well, we had a little dog. His name was Jip, but we had a cat that lived outside, and
did you afford dog food?
No, we had to feed him what bones we could find at the supermarket, which we had to pay for, and scraps from the supermarket or leftovers from our meals is what he lived on.
Now there's a clever thing you did to have some pets that you wanted, because didn't you always dream of getting out of the slum and the city and getting in the country?
Oh yeah, I always thought someday if I could find a way, I would get out of the slum area and get a house, nice house, similar to what I have right now, which is just night and day of what I had as a child and grew up with, and had to start all over in life after I got out of the service.
So Dad, I got to ask you something that's one of my favorite stories. is tell me what you did for unusual pets that your mother couldn't afford. You couldn't buy pets and you couldn't buy pet food. You guys barely could feed. Grandma grew up in a convent, right?
Right.
And her mother died and her father couldn't raise her. She had deformed feet because they didn't have shoes that fit, I remember.
Right.
What did you do for pets? What did you do to find unusual feathered pets?
Well, I used to go down to the railroad. Wasn't very far on the waterfront of the Willamette River, and the Willamette Bridge across the river in Portland. We'd crawl in the girders, up in the girders, and catch pigeons at night, and we'd bring them home, and I built a pigeon coop and myself, just as a young boy, and I built that house, and we had about 30 pigeons, and I built a spindle board where they could come in and out. Once they come in, they couldn't go out unless I let them out. So
where was that house? Where did you build it?
it was in back of my yard, and in the house that we bought there, the old house,
Okay.
which wasn't a big house, but it was enough for our family. But I carried all of the grain doors up from the docks down there to build this, because they couldn't have money to buy lumber. And I built a good, not good looking, but a good pigeon house.
What age? How old were you?
I was only, oh gosh,
10 or 12?
10 to 12 in that area, and that's pretty young, but I knew what I wanted by looking at a friend of mine who had some pigeons, and that's what I wanted to do.
Did you take them, can you tell what kind of pigeons and what you guys would do to put them on a train, remember?
Yeah, we had, after a while, I got to where I was training my pigeons to go out and fly around the house, and sometimes they go as far as a mile, but they'd always come back home. Pigeons go back to where they roost, so that was their home. And later on, I used them in contests. As young as I was, to where we'd take them to Boise, Idaho, and they'd time how long it took to get the first ones back.
Did you put them on trains or?
Yeah, we put them in a box, and they shipped them, and they opened the box up in Boise, Idaho, and let the pigeons out, and they would always come back home. Some would get killed by hawks in the gorge, but usually most of them made it home.
And what would happen when you guys ran out of food, since Grandma would take in your cousins and anyone off the street and stand in line for food? Did you ever come home and find your pigeons gone when y'all got too hungry? Tell about that.
Well, gone. We used to eat the squabs when we used them, and my mother cooked them, and they were excellent food, excellent tasting, and even today pigeons are used for some kind of food in some states. But
You guys didn't have a lot of food, did you?
no, we didn't have a lot of food, so to have each one of us got one pigeon on our plate. That was a small chicken that you see in the store now, those little teeny chickens, where you buy 3 of them for so much. But they're real small, and they were enough for us, and that helped our food bill.
So your grandma, now your father, I know somebody that admired you, came in, and he was kind of like the Brad Paisley song. He was the father he didn't have to be. Before we talk about Grandpa Gabe, very quickly, would you mind doing something that I know a lot of men can't do? When I tell people, okay, this is a show about pain and surviving pain, and I say, well, how would you feel? And most men will say, hurt. But my dad, which is amazing, at 86, can share details of how he felt, which takes a lot of guts and a lot of strength for a man to be able to confess his pain. And I highly admire for my dad. But my dad, when he was about 7 years old, tell him what happened that your father did, your biological father.
Well, my biological father drank too much, and finally he drove a truck for Star Furniture Company, which is in Portland, Oregon, and he accidentally ran over a lady and killed her. It was an accident, and they claimed it was an accident, but at court they sentenced him to 20 years in Walla Walla State Penitentiary for the girl that he ran over, the lady, and killed.
So you grew up without your biological father around.
Right, right.
And let me ask you this. At 7 years old, I remember you saying when they went to handcuff him, you ran up there and tried to get him from the police?
Yeah, I didn't want to lose him, but I held his hand as long as I could, and they finally pulled him out of my arms, and I didn't see him again till I was a teenager, and that was many years in between of not seeing my father.
How does a little boy cope with that kind of pain? How did you get through that pain?
It's hard, but I made it through it. I realized that some of this pain helped me be a better person today, to learn from my mistakes and to learn what the pain did and how it made me want to change and be different than my father. I wanted to be respected, and I wanted to be...
I think you certainly learned compassion. I remember when...
And compassion, yes.
When you traveled the States, I remember, would you mind telling people how compassion, I think this compassion caused you to see some racism in the South, and would you mind telling a short story about the curfew and how you developed a friend and what happened and how you were compassionate with him?
Well, yes, I had many friends, but this certain friend...
what state?
I had one in Portland, and he inspired me with his will to work hard and to study and try to be a better person than what your father was capable of being. For me, I wanted to be better than my father. Even though I loved him dearly, I wanted to be better. And I did that. I went to school, I studied, I got some education, and it sure helped me understand what some people have to go through and what I went through.
I will tell you, having a father that was an alcoholic, that certainly can be repeated in a lot of families. I see that, and I have to admire my dad. Although his dad was an alcoholic, I don't hardly ever remember. The only time I saw my dad with alcohol was every summer when we baled hay. My dad would have a cold beer, and other than that, he just didn't drink. And so now he drinks. He lost my mother, and sometimes has a hard time sleeping. So sometimes he'll have a little bit of wine or something to help him sleep. But other than that, my father has never been. I grew up never seeing him drink, except for having a beer when we baled hay. That was kind of his thing, and having an Orange Crush. Remember how we'd share an Orange Crush?
Right.
So, growing up regarding the homing pigeons and your dad, biological dad. Now tell me about the dad that he didn't have to be, that was. Here came this little short German man that adopted how many kids and took care of them?
I've tried to...
Grandpa Gabe?
Grandpa Gabe, he not only took care of me and my two brothers, and but he also had a daughter with my mother, and then my mother took in his older girls, two girls that was with his first wife, and she raised them with us boys. So we had 3 boys, and we had 2 girls from his first wife, and then again my mother had a daughter by him. Her name was Trina, and she is now in Florida, retired.
And Dad, did Grandma take in your cousins and other kids off the street, kind of?
She would take in anybody off the street and feed them if they were hungry.
Where'd she work? Volunteer? Where'd she work? Down at the center?
Oh, she would work in these centers where people bring stuff in.
Like Goodwill?
Like the Goodwill and stuff. She worked for those centers. And she didn't make much money, but she brought in a little money, and it helped.
3 clones, maybe?
Buy clothes, and we could afford to buy some of the cheaper clothes at the Goodwill.
At the Goodwill. I think that's why today I love the Goodwill. I'm kind of like a trash to treasure person. Grandma taught me to appreciate things. So in coping, you know, you grew up in extreme poverty. I remember you saying, did you ever wake up with snow on the mattress?
Yes, we did. We had a nice house, but again, we didn't have the windows that we should have had. And there's times when we'd wake up in the morning and we had windows, some of them taped because they were broken. My dad couldn't afford to buy the windows at that time, and we had to leave it snow on our blankets in the morning. So we had it pretty rough, but I can't complain. My mother worked hard, and she finally got us.
Well, you could complain, but you don't, right?
It doesn't help to complain. It just helps to learn from your mistakes and try to do better if you can.
So what was your dream growing up in the city? What did you always want?
Well, I always wanted to be able to help people that couldn't afford things that they needed. And I always felt that anything I could do, and even today now I donate my money to various hospitals, and also the one that takes care of cancers for children. I donate to them.
Well, Dad, what I want to ask you about is that you wanted a farm. Do you think that growing up with intense pain, probably one of the ways you may have coped with pain was animals?
Of course, growing up the way I did is why it gave me the strength and the willpower to want to do better. So I thank my mother for the way she raised us. Even though we were poor, it gave me the will to work as hard as I could, which I did. And I finally went to college online, studied.
Well, you didn't go online because you didn't have computers back then,
Right.
but you went to college, right?
I went to college, yeah, and studied what I could do, and later on, when I could get into the stuff I couldn't find back then, I did end up studying as much as I could to help me.
Now, I remember you used to build sheet metal plants. First, your stepfather didn't have a car, but he taught you work ethic, and you'd go to sheet metal, right?
Yep, I went to sheet metal school and studied, and that's when we were getting $3 an hour, and I worked there for my father in my father's plant in sheet metal,
And
plant.
in that sheet metal, learning that school, you ended up traveling all over and helping build sheet metal plants. You even built what stove did you build?
I was the inventor of the Acme wood stove when they had the stoves across the nation. That I was one of the companies that was shipping stoves all over the United States. That started my career in engineering. I was one of the inventors. The Acme wood stove was my stove that I invented.
Now, what else let's talk about this, Korean War.
Yeah.
So what did you do in the Army?
Well, I was supposed to be a cook, and I went to cook and baker school, and
Keep going, I'm going to check if my camera's still running.
Fort Ord, California, and learned quite a bit about cooking. And
Cooked for how many men, barracks?
when I went into the military, I was cooking in Alaska, at Fort Richardson. In one of the barracks was a 1,000-man barracks. There was 4 of them, and I was cooking for 1,000 men in our barracks. I was the mess sergeant.
All right, and Dad, in conclusion, so I want to hear all, and we're going to have you interviewed more and more because I think you probably have more to give to people than I do with your experience of how to cope with pain. Tell us quickly, at 23 years old, what happened to you? What was the tragedy that happened to you?
Well, when I was 23 years old and had finished my schooling, I went to sheet metal school, and I became a sheet metal worker. And when I went to the first big job we had in Oregon, at one of the plants down there in southern Oregon,
Were you on a high wire, or what were you on?
I was sitting on a 12-inch diameter air system, And
How high up in the air were
I
you?
was 23 feet from the ground.
23 feet off the ground, okay.
Yeah, and when I hit the trigger on my drill motor, it hit the pipe and it somehow shorted through that and shocked me, electrocuted me, and I passed out.
How many volts of electricity went through you, do you remember?
110, which is very dangerous because you can't let go of it very easy unless you break loose. And luckily I broke loose. When I hit the ground, my heart started beating again. But
So it actually killed you, and when you hit the cement, it revived your heart.
It started my heart over again, and even though it took me 2 years in the hospital.
You were in a body cast?
Yes, I was in a cast.
What'd you break?
I broke
everything.
Everything that was breakable, and it took me 2.5, 3 years just to be able to come home after the hospital stay.
You were married young. When you went into the hospital, did your young wife come visit you in the hospital?
Of course, yes.
No, Dad?
No.
Remember? She never ever once.
No, she never once came down.
Did the marriage last?
The marriage didn't last.
She never came and visited you in the hospital?
She never came and visited me, and she never took care of me.
How was that emotionally?
Emotionally, that was very, very hard for me to put up with and tolerate, not having somebody to take care of me.
So you had brokenness on the outside and inside at the same time?
Right. I was broken inside badly. Didn't know if I'd ever work again, ever use my hands again, or
and then
my
arms. Your heart broke too, right?
Yep, and my heart was affected. But here, I'm still here.
You're still here. And I want to tell you, my father is someplace we're all going to be. You know, the saying goes, none of us make it out of here alive. A huge thing that was painful for me, and not to get back on me, but my 3rd trimester pregnancy, becoming pregnant for the first time at 42, right?
Right.
They had to sit down and tell me my 3rd trimester on the porch, getting ready to have a baby, Mom and Dad getting ready to see their baby they thought would never have children, experience a pregnancy, and I was told my mother could not come. She never saw me pregnant. The last time I saw my mother, I had to fly home with my very young infant and do hospice until she died. She never got to hear him sing or anything. Very, very traumatic. But I will tell you, losing your wife, you know, we're all going to get there. You've had to deal with incredible pain going on without your companion. What's that been like?
That's not been very good, especially at my age, because my wife was all I had at that time before I came to Tennessee to stay with my daughter.
How do you get through the pain you've been through? Get up every day. My dad gets up every day like clockwork. He makes his list, cleans his room. No matter what things are going through, horrible odds my dad's lived through, incredible poverty. The fall he had created rheumatoid arthritis, and my dad ended up losing how many pounds?
Well, I've lost over 70 pounds.
At what age did you lose that?
Well, I lost it when I first started working out again in Oregon.
About 2006 maybe,
yeah,
when Mom died?
About somewhere before 2006.
You were in your mid to late 70s?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was later, in his late 70s, he dropped how many pounds?
Yeah, over 75 pounds.
He lost over 75 pounds in his 70s. What did you do to cope with pain? You started going and meeting friends at where?
At the gym.
At where? You want to give them a little plug?
Well,
at the Y?
At the YMCA here in Tennessee, at the YMCA in
Portland?
No, well, I started in Portland, but this one here is in the one
Hermitage,
in Nashville.
And now the one out here, Bluegrass Commons.
Yes, at the YMCA out here.
I think the doctor said, didn't the doctor say, do you want to live or die? Because you were married 50 years. If you don't get out there and make friends, you're going to die.
That's right.
So what did you decide?
I decided I wanted to live, and so I had to come to the gym every day. I've been coming to that gym since I came back here 5 years ago, and I go every day, and I spend 2 hours a day working out, lifting weights, exercising, and as soon as this YMCA can open again, when this epidemic's going on here, I'll be able to go back to the gym. Right now I can't go.
So would you say that one of the ways that you've learned to cope with life is through routine and schedule, keeping a schedule no matter what?
Yes, keeping a schedule and making every day a day that you have to live all day long and things to do all day, whether it's go to the gym every day in the morning, come home and do yard work here in my yard.
What happens if you get off your schedule? What happens to your body and what happens to your mind? And
yeah, you got to keep working, because if you don't, your mind is starting to die anyway. You just don't want it to do it very fast. And I'm 86 and I'm still coming to the gym when it opens, and I'm still very active in many things. My strength isn't what it used to be, but I still do a lot of yard work.
well, I have to say, eating healthy, exercising, and keeping a routine is how you have, no matter what pain you go through, and
Right.
through my divorces and things, if you don't think a father doesn't grieve for their kids and their grandkids, I think that would be a false statement. I think the amount of stress that you've had to endure watching your daughter suffer has been horrible, right?
That's been horrible also, and I'll be here to help her as much as I can, as long as I can.
I'm worried about your grandson.
And I'm worried about my little grandson who's not with his mother, and that's where he should be.
Well, growing up as a mother at 42, do you think I did okay as a mom?
You were a fantastic mom.
I was fishing for a compliment. See?
One thing you did is you took care of your child as a mother should, every day, the same thing, and never let up on it. Trained him as a mother should, and taught him many, many things.
Thanks, Dad. And you lived with us, so you kind of vacationed
Yes.
with us, and you saw everything good, bad, and indifferent,
Yep,
right?
I've seen everything, and then let me tell you, my daughter is second to nobody. She's taken wonderful care of that boy, and hope that he'll be back in her hands soon.
Well, I just want to say, Dad, I'm glad that you gave me an example on how to survive incredible pain. If you weren't here and I didn't see you do that every day, I don't think that I would have known how to do it. So I know why God has you here, so I can learn how to cope with incredible pain.
Right.
So thank you.
You're absolutely welcome.
Can I have a hug? Okay. All right. Thank you for joining us. Remember, if you've been through pain, if you've been used, abused, or bruised or broken, you are not alone. It's not okay with me. I don't think it's okay with you either.
No, it's not okay with me.
I hear you. We hear you. You have a voice, so use it. Find out more great stories about Larry Guthrie as on other episodes. Write me at Nashville.con, as in con artist, CON, @gmail.com. Tell us your stories. Like us on YouTube. Give us a like if you liked Larry's stories. Share it. Subscribe to our page, and we hope to be a blessing to everyone in talking transparently about our pain. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Oh.